us, and I'd like to welcome all of you to today's webinar, Leverage Top-Down Estimation for Better IT Planning. Before we get started, I'd like to make you all aware of a few technical items. All of you who are listening to the presentation are currently on mute. To ask a question at any point during the presentation, just use the Q&A dialog box shown on the right-hand side of the WebEx screen. Keith will field as many of these questions as he has time for at the end of the presentation. If he does not have time to answer your question, don't worry. I will save all questions that we don't get to and refer them to Keith so he can get back to you. So I will start by introducing our presenter today. Keith Ciocco has more than 30 years of experience working in sales and customer service, with 25 of those years spent at QSM. As Vice President, his primary responsibilities include supporting QSM clients with their software measurement goals, managing business development and existing client relations. He has developed and directed the implementation of the sales and customer retention process within QSM and has played a leading role in communicating the value of the QSM tools and services to professionals in the software development, engineering, and IT industries. So without further delay, I'll let Keith get started.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thanks everyone for attending our webinar today. Really appreciate it. My plan is to take you through a brief slide presentation, providing some background on QSM and also explaining some of the challenges that we face with software planning and early proposal type of work. Our main focus will be on facing these challenges with top-down scope level types of estimating methods. And after the slides, I'll actually provide a walkthrough of the QSM software as a service tools, and I'll show some examples of how we can help hopefully solve some of these problems. So let's go ahead and get started. So quick background on QSM. This is our 43-year anniversary. So 43 years in business, and our main focus has been to help our clients improve their estimating, project tracking, and metrics programs within their organizations. And we do this by providing world-class estimation tools, consulting types of services, as well as training programs. We're also actually a very big research provider. I don't know if everybody is aware of that. In fact, let me go ahead and I want to show an area on our website where you can actually go and download free articles and white papers on estimating and software and engineering and IT types of planning and estimating. You can see here, if you go to qsm.com and you go to the resources section, you can see 40 years of research in one convenient place. And you can see here a couple of the articles. And then if you arrow down, you can see all the topics that we write about. So it's pretty vast accumulation of articles and white papers, and they're all free. So if you go to qsm.com resources, you can access those at your convenience. Go back to my slides here. And so, yeah, estimating, tracking, and benchmarking. And where do we get all that research? Well, QSM Industry Database, one of the largest databases in the world of completed projects. It's got over 13,000 completed projects, and it brings us the latest information on cost and schedule and effort and quality types of measures. Now, this slide is actually talking about our software production equation, also known as the Putnam Model. So Larry Putnam Sr. Developed these models initially, and you can see here what we're doing is we're linking size, or the amount of work, to the time and the effort that it takes to deliver that work, along with the level of productivity that it's going to take to achieve that level of work delivered and functionality delivered. So this equation is kind of the backbone of the SLIM models and the tools that you're going to be seeing today. And it can actually be rearranged to solve various estimation types of problems. So a lot of times we find ourselves when we're doing proposals or we're trying to make early decisions on projects, we don't have a lot of information, right? So the slim tools that we're going to show today actually allow you to approach the problem from different angles based on the information that you have available. And we're going to show some examples of that today as we move forward here. So some of the challenges that we face, right? Planning challenges that we're going to talk about today. Number one, usually there's minimal information available, right? So we're starting a new project or working on a new proposal, and we might not have a lot of information about that client, that business that we're trying to win over, or that client that we're trying to actually hopefully support at some point. We don't have a lot of information on the client. We might not have a lot of information on the project environment that we're getting ready to embark on. So minimal information available, huge challenge. Challenge number two, short time frame to make decisions. And usually these decisions involve people and resources, functionality that needs to be delivered, client requests, requirements changes from clients that happen later in the decision-making process, things like that. So short time frame to make decisions and short time frame to evaluate the risk associated with those decisions. And we need to have a good way to explain ourselves and to defend the proposals and the decisions that we're making early in the process. Number three would be no data-driven approach, right? How many times are we making decisions based on gut feel or based on experience? It's okay to weigh that into the process, but we really need to have some historical data to lean on when we're trying to negotiate and when we're trying to win business. Number four would be unrealistic targets, right? How many times have we found ourselves in a project scenario where we knew we were going to fail, right? We went into the situation where the schedule was unrealistic and we knew that going in, or the budget was unrealistic and we knew that going in, right? They give us 6 months when we really need 10 or 11 months, right? Those types of scenarios. So unrealistic targets, huge planning challenge. And then number five, no big picture analysis. So usually, we're trying to make decisions as managers kind of at the granular level. We're trying to figure out how many hours each person's going to work, and then we want to try to roll that up in a spreadsheet before we really know what the big picture is, right? Where's the light at the end of the tunnel? Is this going to be 6 months or 12 months? Do we have 10 people or do we have 20 people? So it really is helpful if we can deal with that type of planning challenge early, where we can see a big picture scope before we move forward. Now, meeting those challenges, number one way that we're going to hopefully meet these challenges by generating early top-down estimates. And hopefully we're going to do this before we begin any detailed type of planning. We're going to show some examples of how to achieve this today. Leveraging sizing and historical data is another way to meet the challenges. So many times as managers, we're trying to make decisions just based on cost or budget or effort, or the effort numbers that we have or that we might be guessing at. So if we can leverage sizing information or scope that we need to deliver, right, based on, and also if we can make decisions based on historical data, it's going to hopefully help us a lot. It's hopefully going to increase our chances of success down the road. Third way we're going to talk about today that we're going to meet these challenges is by leveraging empirically based models and also industry data, right? So at QSM, we're always encouraging our clients to pull together their own historical data, right? That's a best practice. Definitely want to try to do that. But a lot of times when we're doing proposal type of work, we don't have a lot of historical data. Sometimes going in, we're trying to win business, we have zero historical data. And that's where using reliable models based on someone else's history and also based on industry can really go a long way to helping us. I mean, how valuable would it be if we're trying to bid a price on a software system if we knew what the typical price to deliver that is normally, or the typical schedule that is often achieved? How valuable would that be going in? So that's a big way that we can meet the challenge. We're going to talk about that today. And then number four, we want to be able to leverage analytics to communicate more effectively and really to negotiate more effectively. So we're talking here about proposals, trying to win business. We're also talking about in-house development, right? those early decisions when we're just building systems for our own company. So either way, we want to be able to leverage analytics to communicate with the stakeholders so that we can show them the data. We can show them why we believe in a cost or a schedule or a quality type of target that we're working with. Now, I mentioned negotiating. Okay, negotiating is huge. And the way to negotiate successfully on these types of projects, whether it's IT, whether it's engineering, whether it's some combination of both, whether it's a cloud migration, whether it's custom software, the way to help us improve our negotiating is to be able to lean on historical data. Okay, and if any of you have ever attended some of our webinars, you've probably seen a chart or similar to this, at least, maybe this exact one, because I like to show this. We're actually looking at a cluster of data from the QSM industry database, right? That research database that I talked about. And we're looking at a relationship here. We're looking at time on the vertical, and we're looking at size or functionality on the horizontal, okay? And we're looking at the data from the database, and we can kind of see a gradual slope in the data. So we can see here that as projects get bigger, they typically take longer, right? That's the relationship that we're looking at here. And then in bold red letters here, we have what we call the impossible zone. And the reason why I always highlight this is because this is where so many people fail to focus. And this is why a lot of projects fail, because especially when we're doing proposals or we're making early decisions, we will sign up to schedules and budgets that are unrealistic. And the reason why is because we don't know any better, because we don't see the forest through the trees, right? We're down at the granular level trying to figure out individual hours and kind of trying to roll them up, instead of taking a top-down view and looking at some historical data and some scope level information to figure out, what's reasonable and what's not. So if we can get a handle on the impossible zone early in our proposal work, we can increase the chances of success, creating realistic targets and hopefully winning business a lot more effectively. Now, this particular slide that I'm starting with here shows an example from the QSM tool called Slim Collaborate, which is our software as a service model. Okay, this is one view. And you can see here that we're using scope-based inputs in this example. And we took a snapshot here from it. We're actually looking at the feasibility method, right, from Slim Collaborate to do a very early proposal estimate. And you can see here in this example, the inputs that we need, just three, right? Remember, early on, minimal information available. We don't have a lot of data. So we're going to rely on just some high-level information, and then we're going to let the QSM empirically-based models and historical data do the work. So here in this example, we're going to put in how much work needs to be delivered. We're looking at 276,903 implementation units, which is the sizing measure that I'm using in this example. But this could easily be story points. It could be features. It could be business requirements. It can be whatever you would decide to use to measure your work that you're going to deliver. So we're going to put in the amount of work that needs to be delivered, and then we're going to put in the time and the effort that we have available, right? This is what our target is. This is what we're hoping for to win the business, right? To achieve customer success. Now, in this example, it's 6 months, and then we've got 25 people. This could also be effort or a cost number. It's flexible. And so we're putting in those 2 or 3 bits of information, and then we're going to be able to generate estimates that give us a wealth of analytics so we can negotiate and communicate the estimate to our client and to the stakeholders at your own particular company. Now, this is one approach. Now, if I didn't have this information, I would approach the problem from a different angle. And that brings us back to that software production equation, right? The Putnam Model, right? Which gives us flexibility in the way we approach our problems and our estimates and our proposals. So if I didn't have this information, I would approach it differently. And we're going to look at some examples today as we get further into this webinar. And then this slide here is actually showing one of the other points I made is that we want to be able to generate analytics to negotiate realistic targets. Okay. Again, another snapshot from our software as a service, Slim Collaborate, where we're actually looking at the output of an estimate for a proposal. Just by putting in those 3 inputs that you just saw, now we're generating an estimate, and We're calling it a feasibility assessment because it's early in the process. It's a high-level estimate. And you can see the first chart here is a staffing view. And you can see in the gold there, the gold would be my estimate, that feasibility estimate that I generated. And it's telling me for 25 people, right? I'm gonna use 25 people, a full-time equivalent per month to deliver the work that I'm proposing for my client. And then in green, you can see what QSM is saying. The QSM models are saying, hey, we probably need to allow for a few more people here because just using 25 people is going to be risky. Now, this is in this example. There might be scenarios where it might be the opposite effect, right? Where we want a smaller team. And we'll talk more about that as we get into the webinar. But so that's my staffing estimate, 25 people. And then if you look to the right, you can see on the center chart, you can see the gold column and the green column. The gold column is my estimate in a little more detail, showing the time and the effort that I would like to achieve to win this business for this proposal. And I'm proposing 6 months with 25,792 person hours of effort at about $3 million cost. And again, the QSM model comes back and says, hey, that's pretty risky. We probably need to allow for a little bit more time and effort to be safe, right? We want to win the business, but we don't want to create a scenario that is going to cause problems, right? Heartburn later on down the road with the customer. And then to the right of that, we've got another chart that shows a scatter plot. And here we're looking at our QSM business government trends, which is one particular knowledge base from the QSM database that I mentioned earlier, that research database. And you can see in the gold is my estimate. And you can see on the chart, we're looking at effort in this example. And this would be my proposal for the amount of effort I'm going to spend. And you can see the trend line there is actually the industry average for this particular type of project. So if I'm doing a proposal and I don't have any experience and I'm trying to win business, I can lean on the QSM industry data and all that research to help justify the cost and the schedule and the effort that I'm proposing to my client. Now, in this example, you can see it's a little bit aggressive. So the Slim Collaborate and also the QSM model, same thing, is telling me that my effort proposal is moderately risky. So I might want to take a second look at this, right? Only moderately risky because I'm within the standard deviation, which is my comfort zone here, but still not totally consistent with what other people are doing in my industry. Okay, so there's a snapshot for you from the software as a service QSM tools. Now I'm going to go ahead and let's actually show some real life examples. Okay, we're going to open Slim Collaborate, software as a service, and what we're actually looking at here. So we're going to show some examples of how we can hopefully solve some of these early IT planning problems and try to come up with some realistic solutions. Okay, so what we're looking at here is actually a web instance within Slim Collaborate. Now this could be your web instance with your project data. And you could set this up however you would like with your login information, your passwords, with all of your projects stored in your centralized database. And QSM can handle the hosting for you. So you would just need to log in. And you can also set up email notifications as well. You can set up your particular preferences so that you can help promote communication across your organization so that you can be transparent with your clients and your stakeholders. Now, as we move to the center of the page, sort of the bottom center here, we can see that we're looking at a project list filter showing a portfolio of completed projects in this example. Okay, and these filters can be set up with historical projects or they can be estimates that are in your pipeline. And we can organize the projects into different status categories and application domains, things like that. And you can basically set these up however you would like. And once you choose the filter, a whole big group of analytics will come up for your project and your portfolio cost and schedule and scope information. Okay, all that'll be provided for you to help you with your negotiations with your client and your stakeholders. And you can see here, if I click on this, it gives you a ton of options. You can see I've got multiple filters built. I've got my agile projects that are in my pipeline. I've got all my bids and proposals that I'm working on. I've got projects that have been completed. I've got my cybersecurity projects. I've got estimates that have been approved, estimates that are in progress, estimates that need changes, right? So you can set this up however you would like. Now, let's go ahead and, basically when we're trying to make early decisions for proposals or whether it's for a client or internal stakeholders, it all starts with historical data, really, right? That's the best practice. That's what we encourage at QSM. It all starts with historical data. Now, if you don't have any, that's okay. We'll work with what you have to help you, okay? And if you don't have any, that's where the QSM industry database comes into play. You can lean on it. You can actually lean on it whether you have your own historical data or not, but you would lean on it more heavily if you're going into a proposal without any of your own historical data, okay? Now, this particular filter, like I mentioned, focuses on projects that have already been delivered. That's why we're calling them closeout projects, okay? Let's go ahead and take a look at one of these just to start. And let's go ahead and look at the data here. Now, what we're doing here, what we would recommend is you actually start pulling, if you have some history, you put it, you capture it, and you keep it streamlined, and you focus on some basic core measures, okay? So what we're doing here is we're taking the amount of effort spent. This is a project that's already been completed, the amount of effort that was spent, the schedule that elapsed, right? You can see here this particular project started in about April 2013, went about a year, actually 12 months, okay? So we want to capture the effort spent, the cost, and the duration, and also the amount of work that was delivered, okay? So once we capture those basic measures, the total effort and the duration and the work delivered, we can calculate what we call a productivity index. And again, that brings us back to that software production equation where I showed you the links, right? The amount of work linked to the time and the effort, and also linked to the level of productivity. What we're doing here is we're mathematically calculating that productivity based on your historical data. And then we're going to use those measures to help us make better decisions on proposals and early project estimates. Okay, so we've got some basic measures here. In fact, we can go now to the analysis of this particular project, and we can see how this particular project performed. And the first thing we're going to look at is that productivity index that was calculated. So we calculated a 20.4 productivity index, and that was based on your historical data on this particular project. Okay, and again, just to elaborate a little bit more, the productivity index is a macro measure for efficiency and productivity. It takes into account the overall project environment, the overall project and process maturity, things like experience level of the people that were on that project, complexity of the work that you're doing, right? Are you building a web application, or are you building a command and control system, things like that. So complexity of the software you're working on, experience level of the people, tools and methods you might be using, things like that. The process that you're working in. So it's going to measure that empirically. It's going to take your historical data and calculate your productivity. And you're going to be able to use these measures to make better decisions for your proposal work and your early project estimate decisions. Whether it's an IT project, or whether it's software engineering, whether it's a cloud migration, whether it's a big IT transformation project, it's all going to be relevant. It's all going to be able to calculate based on these productivity numbers. Okay? So this project performed pretty well. You can see the productivity index compared to the trend line there, which in this example would be the industry average for your particular application domain. So if you're doing a proposal for a client in the command and control engineering world, then we're going to pull in those set of trend lines. If you're doing a custom web application for a client, or you're doing an IT agile project, we're going to pull in that set of trend lines. So you can see how your proposal compares to the industry, so you know if you're competitive or not. Okay, that's really important to know. That is hugely valuable when we're trying to win business and we're trying to keep our relationships solid with our clients. Okay, so productivity. Now, if you look to the far left here, you can see this project also performed well with the staffing. We actually staffed this up pretty competitively, right? You can see the staffing, that's the data point. That's your data point, your project compared to the industry average. Okay, so not only do we look at productivity, but we look at staffing and effort and cost and quality. If we scroll down a little bit, you can see that we also have what we call 5-star ratings. Okay, 1 star being top 10% in the industry. Okay. And you can see this project performed pretty well no matter how you look at the data. You can see that this project performed at a 3-star level, which is about top 30% in the industry for staffing as well as productivity. Okay. Now, the reason why I'm showing you the history first is because this is going to help us do a better job of making decisions if we can see where we've been before, right? You've probably heard that before. So it's kind of a best practice that we encourage. Now, that snapshot was looking at one project that had been completed. We can also look at our portfolio of projects by just clicking on the dashboard there. And as soon as I do that, it brings up all these different analytics on projects that have been completed. And you can see here, if I click the arrow, that I can bring up a whole set of dashboards that might describe different views on the particular project. Okay. Now, the first dashboard we're looking at is the staffing and cost dashboard that I set up. And we're looking to my left, I can see a portfolio timeline. I can see the start and end date of each project. Okay. I can see, if I look to my right, the dollars that were spent, right? Dollars per month over time. I can see how my projects were staffed, and I can see the name of each project if I hover over it. And I've got the cumulative cost as well in US dollars in this example. So I can see the time and the effort and the costs that I've achieved in the past, and this is going to help me make those early project decisions going forward. Now, I can also look at the data in other ways. In fact, I can say, okay, how did we perform on an annual basis? And you can see here, in this particular scenario, I have a snapshot of 4 years. You can see in 2016, we actually had our highest year of productivity. That same year, we actually spent the most money. And that same year, we actually delivered the most work. Okay, so there's a relationship for you there. We probably want to take a look at that, why that's happening the way it is, to help us make better decisions going forward, right? See where we've been in the past. So 2016 was a year that we had our highest productivity, and we also spent the most money, and we also delivered the most work. Interesting relationship there. And then we can also look at our portfolio in terms of how did we compare to industry, not only at one project at a time, but at the portfolio level. And you can see here, I brought up some additional analytics. And you can see here, I'm looking at schedule, development duration. These projects are projects you've completed hypothetically in the past. And then the trend line is the industry average for that type of project. These could be all of your proposals that you've already done, right? For that same client or for other clients. That's the duration. Here's the effort. Now, this could be an industry trend line from QSM, or you could create your own custom trend lines as well. And then you can look at the data in different ways. So here, if I scroll down, you can see we also have these bubble charts. And you can see here, these are projects that have been completed. We've got this green rectangle, which represents my comfort zone, right? That's the target. That's where I was hoping to be. And you can see these projects here performed at a higher productivity and therefore had shorter schedules. And if I look to my bottom right, I can see that these projects performed at a lower productivity and therefore had longer schedules. And then we actually have one that's kind of an outlier here that was extremely low productivity and extremely long schedule. So we probably want to take a look at this and figure out why that happened to help us make some decisions going forward. Okay, so we can look at the data in different ways to help us solve some of these issues and help us do a better job of planning in the future, right? Where have we been as far as cost and effort? Why did we get that way so that we can do a better job of being successful in the future? Now, that's a snapshot of historical data. We looked at it at the release level, and we looked at it at the portfolio level. Now, let's look at how we're going to leverage that information to make better decisions going forward with our estimating and our planning. Okay, so I'm going to go to my filter here, and I'm going to actually bring in my portfolio of proposal estimates that I have in my pipeline. Okay, or proposals or bids or whatever you would like to call them. Let's go ahead and take a look at one of these, and let's look at how we're going to leverage our historical data to do a better job of estimating and planning. And click on one of these. And what's going to happen is it's going to open up the project for me. And I'm going to go to the estimating area. And the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to configure the tool to represent the problem I'm trying to solve, really, and my project environment. So I'm going to go to the settings tab, and I'm going to give the project a name. Then I'm going to give it a status. And I'm going to say, so is this an estimate that's in progress? Does it need to be approved? What's the status so that everybody's on the same page going forward? I'm going to want to pick a trend group, okay? And this is huge. I don't want to gloss over this because this is really important. If you're doing proposals and you're trying to win business, and you can get a handle on knowledge bases that represent projects that have already been completed that are similar to what you're about to do, that's hugely valuable and hopefully can save you a lot of money in the future. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on the industry knowledge base or trend group that represents the project I'm about to begin. Okay, and when I do that, what happens is it brings in the typical cost and schedule and effort numbers for that particular type of project. Just like I showed in my slides, right? All that research data can be broken out into different application domains and things like that, right? Based on the research. So I'm going to use it here. I'm going to bring in the most recent information, most recent data from the QSM database representing the project that I'm about to start. And then I'm going to put in some additional information, the typical, the person hours per person month that I'm working with, any labor rates that I might be working with, whether it's one overall labor rate or labor rates broken out by skill. I'm going to designate the monetary unit, right? Here it's US dollars. I'm going to tailor the phases so they represent the way I do business. I'm also going to designate how I typically allocate resources and how am I planning on doing it on this particular project. For example, if I have 10 people, are all 10 going to go from start to finish, or are we going to gradually add people on and take people off? How are we going to load the project and, how are we going to allocate our resources? I am going to specify my reliability parameters, right? Because not only do we want to make sure our project finishes on time and within budget, but we want the system to work when we deliver it, right? So we want to make sure the parameters are set up correctly. We want to make sure we lean on historical data. And here we're going to specify some of the parameters, the hours per day, the days per week, things like that. I'm going to go ahead and choose my configuration sets. I'm going to configure this template to represent the project I'm about to work on. And whether that be an IT infrastructure project, whether it be a software engineering type of project, whether it's agile, whether it's waterfall, whether it's some hybrid. So I'm going to choose the configuration that represents the project environment that I'm working in. And just think about it. You're doing a proposal. And if I had this information at my fingertips and I'm getting ready to do a proposal and I can pull in a configuration set that represents that business, that market, typical cost, schedule, and effort numbers, how valuable is that, right? That really helps a ton in decision making. So I'm going to set up this template. And by the way, once you set it up, you don't have to do it again. You can just use the same template over and over again. You can tweak it. You can create new templates. It's flexible. Once I create the template, then I'm going to make some decisions. I'm going to actually run the estimates, okay? And this brings us to that slide that I showed, right, where we talked about the feasibility method. This is very popular with our clients that do proposals because it requires very little information. So in this example, like the slide, I'm going to put in how much work needs to be delivered. And again, this is in implementation units, but this is flexible. You can set this up based on how you measure size or scope. This could say story points. It could say user stories. It could say epics. It could say features. It could say components, whatever you're working with. In this example, I'm going to put in the amount of time I have available, which is 6 months, and then I'm going to put in the total amount of people that I've been given for this particular project. Remember one of my slides, right? A short time frame to make decisions. Well, 3 things in, also minimal information available, right? 3 things in, can run an estimate here within a few minutes, right? After thinking about the settings and then thinking about the inputs here. Now, this is staff. I've got staff here, but this is flexible. I could put in my budget. I can put in my effort goals or constraints, things like that. Now, that's one approach. Okay, let's say I don't have all this information available. I can approach it from a different angle. Okay, I can do what we call the trend-based method. I can simply put in just how much work is on the RFP, right? How much work does the client want? And I can let the QSM empirically-based models do all the work. Okay, again, this brings us back to that software production equation, the flexibility of approaching problems from different angles, right? So in this example, we only know the scope. Now, let's say I have more information available. So in this example, I have the scope, I have the productivity index now, based on my historical data, and I have the staffing availability. Or I have the budget, or I have the effort, or I have the schedule that I need to hit, whatever your constraints are. Again, flexibility in the decision making. Now, if I have more information, I can certainly leverage that. The more information, the better. Even though we can make decisions at a high level, if you have more information, we can certainly leverage that. Again, leveraging top-down estimation for better IT planning, right? So we're going to go in here, and we're going to put in more detail. So, because maybe I know how many stories, and I can break it out by complexity. Maybe I know how many epics. Or let's say I'm not doing an agile project. Maybe I'm doing a data warehouse project. So I can bring in a whole new template within seconds and say, okay, I'm working on a data warehouse project. So I can bring in the industry template here and say, okay, now we're looking at number of transformations, number of data structures, things like that, right? So flexibility in the way we define the work. Now, so that was kind of a detailed example. Let's say I'm doing a Scrum, right? This is really popular with our Agile clients, and this whole time box approach, right? And sometimes they'll say, oh, well, you might hear from some Agile folks, well, I don't need to do an estimate. I already know the cost. Okay, but that's okay. Even though you know the cost, we still need to validate whether that cost is realistic. We still need to validate whether the schedule is realistic, right? So in this example, we're going to put in what your fixed parameters are, whether it's 6 months or 10 months, whether it's 25 people or 20, whether it's, a budget of $1 million or $2 million. We're going to put in what your fixed parameters are. We're going to put in the productivity index from the most recent Agile projects from the QSM database, okay? And then we're going to let Slim collaborate. Again, software as a service, QSM models, all the same thing. Slim Collaborate is what it's called. We're going to let Slim Collaborate run the model and generate the scope. How much work can you get done within those fixed parameters? And also providing the ability to look at trade-offs like, well, what if we add that backlog in? How much more will that cost? Or what if we add the extra Scrum team in? Can that help us get done on time, right? So we can look at trade-offs as well. So in this example, again, time, people, the PI that's calculated from your Agile projects or the QSM database projects, and then we're going to figure out the scope and we're going to validate whether these parameters are realistic or not. Now, let's go back to the feasibility because that's where we started. And again, very popular with our clients that are doing proposals. And we're going to go ahead and run the estimate based on the functionality that they need to deliver that based on their RFP. And then the target, 6-month target with 25 people. When I hit OK, what it does is it runs the estimate, runs the models, and it brings us to this analysis area. Okay? And we're calling this the feasibility assessment. That's the name of this dashboard. If you can see if I click on the arrow, like I said in my slides, a wealth of analytics at my fingertips here. So I can say, okay, let's take a look at the feasibility assessment first. It's the high level information. And just like that slide I showed, you can see my target, 25 people in gold, and you can see in green the QSM estimate for 30 people. QSM model is saying, hey, 25 is risky. We probably need a few more people. I look to the right, and I've got 2 columns. The gold is my target, my estimate for my proposal, or my in-house project if I'm not doing a proposal, right? Whether you're doing a proposal or whether you're doing in-house development, both are equally weighted here. This supports both fully. And whether you do an IT or engineering, it supports both fully. Okay, so target here, current estimate, 6 months, 25,000 person hours of effort, $3 million. QSM models are saying, hey, a little risky. I really should allow for a little more time and effort. If I scroll down a little bit, I can see that scatter plot. I can see my estimate compared to the industry trend. I can see that I'm probably too aggressive on the pricing here. I'm probably not charging enough money. You can see the cost here as well. I've got effort here. I've got cost here, right? You can see QSM saying I should probably charge a little bit more money on this particular proposal based on historical data, right? Now, this first estimate in gold here, this is my 50% estimate right out of the box. Let's say I had no history. I'm just relying on right out of the box estimate from QSM. So let's say that's my 50% solution. Okay. Now, if I have the luxury, I'll run another estimate again as I get more data. But a lot of times when we're doing proposals, we don't have that luxury. We've got to make decisions quickly, right? Back to that, I need to make decisions quickly. That's a big challenge. Well, we're going to do it right now. We're going to go to what we call the contingency planning dashboard. I'm going to click on that, and it's going to bring me a whole nother set of analytics here. Instead of based on 50%, it's going to base it on 80%. So I'm saying, give me the schedule and the budget that I've got an 80% chance of achieving instead of a 50. Give me the high assurance, or give me the higher assurance, right? I can go to 95% as well. Okay, let's take the 80 since it's what I've got here open. I've got the gold here was my 50%, 25,000 person hours of effort. My 80% high assurance estimate, the one I'm probably going to want to condition the customer to, is saying, okay, I should probably allow for 35,000 person hours of effort. If I scroll down a little bit, you can see my 50% in gold compared to the 80%, and you can see the cost as well. So the contingency planning helps us manage the uncertainty. It helps us buffer in on the estimates, helps us provide a more conservative estimate if needed. If I look to my left here, I've got the total effort probability chart, right? You can see not looking too good for 10 to 20,000 person hours of effort. So I don't want to bid down here. Much better up here in the 40 to 50K range, or 40 to 50,000 person hour range. That would be my high assurance estimate. Okay, so high assurance estimates, part of the plan, right? Those early plans, build in buffer to feel secure going into the proposal or to the early decision, the go or no go decision. So feasibility, let's take a deeper look. Let's go to the estimate assessment. Okay. Similar dashboard, similar views, except a little different. I've got the staffing view that you're familiar with. But if I look to my right, I've got a view that actually breaks the risk out for me. For those folks that are managing risk and uncertainty, now I can see how much risk I'm dealing with by metric. So in this example here, my effort proposal, 25,000 person hours, moderately risky. Total staff, not too bad, pretty typical. I'm competitive on the staffing, effort, a little high. And then productivity index, I'm probably giving myself too much credit. I'm probably assuming that I'm going to work a little bit better than I normally work. That's a red flag, right? We don't want to put in a productivity index that we've never achieved before. If I scroll down, you can see some additional scatter plots. Earlier, we looked at effort. This example, we're looking at those same business government trends. Now, in this example, my estimate in the gold for productivity is showing you graphically it's a little high. That's why it's moderately risky, right? It's a little higher than the industry average. That's what other people are. When I say industry average, remember, this is other people doing proposals that have already delivered work, right? People in your business, so you can see if your bid is competitive right off the bat. And then I can look at schedule too, which is huge, right? We want to get done on time for the customer. You can see duration on the vertical. You can see my estimate here again in gold is a little bit aggressive. I'm probably promising too short of a schedule here if I move forward with this particular bid. Now, part of the whole game of this is being able to communicate and negotiate and compare solutions, really. The negotiating, right? So these could be different people on your team, right? The gold bar there is my estimate. The green bar could be the estimate for somebody else on your team, one of the stakeholders. They have a different viewpoint, right? So in this example, that's my 6-month schedule, and this is their 8-month schedule. Now, in this example, this is the QSM estimate. This is that model-based, industry average-based estimate. But I could have this in the chart along with mine. I could have 3 or 4 other bids for the same release. So we can compare and contrast and negotiate and talk about it to make sure we're all on the same page going forward. And now that's I've been talking at the release level here, right? We can also make decisions at a more granular level. Once we know, is it going to be 6 months or 12 months, right? Once we know that, forest through the end of the trees, light at the end of the tunnel. Once we know the big picture, then we can also figure out, well, how much are we going to spend by role by month? So we can do our detailed planning. And let's look at effort again, since we've been talking a lot about effort. You can see here's my estimate broken out by role by month and by color coded here. You can see the programmers are in green. And you can see that I'm planning on spending a total of 16,000 person hours of effort for my programmers. Now, if I only have 14,000 in my budget, that's a red flag, right? But now we know it early before the go or the no-go decision. Okay, so I've been talking at the release delivery level. And in addition to that, we also want to be able to make decisions at the portfolio level. So here's the same filter of, same database of bids and proposals that I have in my pipeline. And we just analyzed one bid. Now we're going to analyze all of my bids. And I'm going to bring in some of the data here so you can see how everything stacks up next to each other. So this would be the timeline for all of my proposals. This would be the dollars per month, right, for all of my proposals, staffing and cumulative cost as well. So we can look at the release view, we can look at the portfolio view, and this is going to help us plan at a broader level, right? If I'm a C-level executive, or maybe I report to them and they need to know decisions about what we're going to spend next year, or, do we have the capacity to fulfill the demand that we're shooting for? Do we have that capacity? That's what these tools help you figure out. This is a higher level portfolio view to make organizational decisions. And it's beautiful because we get all the stakeholders on the same page. It's all in the cloud, right? We're hosting it for you. You log in. This is all at your fingertips. You don't even have to install anything. We host it. You log in and see it. This is your website. Now, once I make decisions for the proposal and the early planning at the release and the portfolio level, I'm going to want to track my progress, right? This is where a slim control comes in. Okay. Now, we've won the business. We're working with the client, and now we want to make sure we're successful. So we're going to put our actuals into this tool once a month. I'm going to put in this example, we're looking at total people. We're looking at total features, and we're looking at total defects found, broken out by severity. So you can create custom metrics. You can track whatever you'd like. This is a high-level assessment, project level, release level assessment. You're just putting in the totals once a month, 3 or 4 things, and then any custom metrics that you want to track. Like here, I've got design components and integration builds. This particular tool would actually be able to sit on your desktop, okay? And you would track the progress of your project and see if you're staying according to plan. Okay, so I'm putting my actuals in once a month or every 2 weeks or whatever my comfort zone is. And now I can see if the project is still healthy. Am I getting in trouble, or am I heading towards success? So I'm looking at a dashboard here of plans and actuals. Let's look at features for a second. You can see my initial plan in blue, okay? And then you can see the actuals in red. That's what I'm putting in once a month. And you can see the yellow lights on. It's telling me I'm getting in trouble. Caution lights on, right? It's telling me, okay, hey, something's going wrong here. We've got to take a second look at this. Okay, so we're tracking the project now. We're looking at defects. Remember, we don't want to just make sure we finish on time and within budget, but we also want the system to work. So we're looking at red light information, right? We're in trouble finding a lot more defects than we had planned. That's a problem. But at least we know early, right? And before the project finishes, we know we're in trouble. We need to make some decisions. And what we're going to do now is we're going to run another estimate. We're going to run an estimate during the project. Okay. It's almost like a GPS for your software project, right? You're on track, you're on the map, you're moving forward, and now things have happened. Or a customer changed their mind on some things. Maybe the targets weren't right. We need to adapt. We call this adaptive forecasting, meaning we're going to run new estimates based on changes. And this tool is actually going to curve fit to the actuals and run projections based on those actuals. So we're going to show that now. We're going to go to the forecast area here. We're going to run a forecast. And what's going to happen is it's going to curve fit to the actuals and run a new projection. And it's going to show me where I'm going to be. So here we go. So let's look at the schedule first. So this is where the blue bar that you see there is my plan, was my initial plan. The red bar is where we are right now in time with the team, right? Trying to deliver for this customer. And the green bar is my new estimate because things changed, right? So customer had some requirements changes. They wanted to see some extra features, or maybe a couple of the targets you figured out that they weren't reasonable, things like that. But we're going to adapt to that now and make adjustments. And you can see that we're going to be late. So what are we going to do about it? So now we have a communication vehicle to talk about it. Let's take a closer look. We had planned on delivering 508 features. We've only delivered 394 so far. We had planned on spending $2 million, and we've actually already overspent. We've already spent $2.1 million, almost $2.2 million. So what Slim Control is doing is it's taking the actual amount of work delivered, the actual effort spent, the actual duration that has elapsed, and it's recalculating this productivity index. And you can see that we had planned on a 16.1. We're only achieving a 14.5, and that's why we're running late. Okay. And now we need to make some decisions, right? Risk trade-off analysis during the project, short time frame for decisions, right? Minimal information available, short time frame for decisions. We're going to go and say, okay, let's look at some trade-offs. What are we going to do about it? So we can say, okay, and this is what a lot of managers will do. They'll say, okay, let's add people. So, we'll go from 27 to 37 people. And you can see the impact on that. Within seconds, I can see the whole new estimate with the bigger team size. And you can see that I'm adding all those people, and you can see it's throwing the cost way up. I'm going from $5.5 to $6.8 million, and I'm only saving about 3 weeks. So that's a problem, right? So it's not always a good idea to add people. In fact, with that research that we do, we find that a lot of times there's actually a diminishing returns when we add people. And now when I hit OK, it takes that new estimate, it updates the chart, it'll compare it to the initial estimate, so you keep that as well. And you can see that even by adding those people, you're still going to be late. You can see the staffing skyrocket, the cost skyrocket. You can see we're still going to deliver late. And then you can say, okay, well, that might not be a good decision. Maybe it is. We've got to talk to the customer. Maybe the customer can live without those features till the next release. Is that something to consider? So we can look at that trade-off here. We can say, okay, what if we tie it up early? What kind of impact will that have? And when I say, okay, run the model again, another estimate with a smaller scope. And you can see that almost gets us done on time, much better cost-wise and people-wise. And you can see here where we've tied it up early. So the question is, you'd want to talk about this. Does the customer prefer to get it done on time at a lower cost and just live without some of the functionality till later? Do they prefer to spend a ton more money to definitely get it done full functionality? Or is it okay to let it slip a couple weeks and then still hit the budget and hit the delivery full functionality? So these are all the trade-offs that you can bring to the table. You have the data to lean on, the transparency to count on as well, and the communication vehicle so everybody's on the same page early. Now, I know I'm running out of time here. We want to leave some time for questions. Once the project is completed, all that data goes into what we call the Slim Data Manager, right? So we can use it the next time. So here, we're going to capture how much work was actually delivered, how much time and effort was actually spent, so we can calculate the productivity index for this particular project. So we can use that the next time we have a proposal or we have an early planning decision within our organization. And then this information can go right back up to the cloud, to your website or to your web instance within Slim Collaborate, so you can share it with the stakeholders and it can be part of your corporate database. That concludes the webinar. In summary, though, just to quickly summarize, really, being able to generate these data-driven, top-down, scope-based estimates early can really help a ton with negotiating realistic targets, which in turn can really help set reasonable customer expectations. And if you're not working with an external customer, internal clients or the stakeholders that you're dealing with internally as well. So thank you for listening today. I will turn it back over to Elizabeth for question and answers.
Thank you, Keith. And just to let everyone know, there will be a replay available if you missed anything in the beginning. And we'll definitely get to as many questions as we have time for. But, as I reminded you, or as I mentioned in the beginning, we will be able to follow up on any questions that we don't get to. But send them over and we'll see how many we can get to today. So to start, does the tool estimate size, or is size the input only?
It'll do both. So if you have a size input, you can leverage that by putting that into the tool. If you don't have the size or the scope, you can put in other parameters and then it'll figure out the size for you. Now, it's not a per se, if you mean is it a function point counting tool or is it a code counting tool? No, but it will estimate the size based on your parameters. Like, for example, if you have a schedule where you got to get done in 6 months in a certain budget, remember that software production equation, right? It's flexible based on the information you have. If you don't know the scope, it'll estimate that for you based on other parameters. So both would be a quick answer to that question. Yeah.
Okay, so hopefully I can phrase this one correctly. So this is in regards to which trend group to use, and I think this is regarding productivity. But when I have an Angular or TypeScript at the front end and a C# middle tier, an Oracle backend, web-based ERP system, which trend group do you use? Hope I phrased that right.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, good, nice question. Great question. So the trend groups within QSM are at a high level, right? So you can use a combination of trend groups. And so if you're doing a package implementation and it's also got some custom software, you can bring in a couple sets of trends, the package implementation trends, as well as a particular custom software development trend, based on the application domain that you're in, right? Whether it's web development or whether you're doing some type of business application or engineering application. So you can bring in multiple trend groups. The trend groups are not granular to the extent of, okay, these are the C++ trend groups. It's going to be more high level, like these are the package implementation trends, and these are the business application trends, and these are the command and control trends. So you can bring in multiple trend groups, and they represent kind of high level application domains.
And this is a clarification. The question is, the solution you presented is divided between web application and desktop application. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I showed a couple different applications. Slim Collaborate is our web-based, cloud-based software as a service tool. That's for the estimating and the portfolio management, right? That's portfolio planning. The tool I showed at the end is a desktop application, but the desktop and the cloud work together, right? So they integrate together. So you could use both. And eventually, the plan is to have some of that tracking capability as well in the cloud. But right now we've got the cloud, and we've for the estimating. And then if you wanted to track the project, we also have the Slim Control tool as well. But they're integrated together. Hope that answers it. Okay. Yep.
So can you also use NESMA function points, IFPUG function points, or Cosmic function points?
The answer would be yes to all of the above. So you can use any type of function point sizing that you wish, and not only function points, but also any other sizing measure, whether it's features or use cases or business requirements. And the sizing can be very high level or it can be detailed. And also, if you don't have, a lot of challenge, sizing is a big challenge to people, right? So even if you just had a t-shirt size, is it big, small, or medium? We can leverage that. And if you don't have size at all, again, we'll approach you from a different angle. We'll use the information you have available. But best practice and what we encourage is to at least start trying to pull together sizing. And we support all of the function point methods fully. Yeah. Hopefully that answered it for you.
And this is a comment, but I think you can speak to it. And it says, using size like story points is not a standard. Every team has another definition of one story point. So what would you say to that?
So great question. That's why sizing tends to be a challenge for people, right? Because they define things differently. But we can normalize the way you define the different sizing measures. And we do that using industry data. So we know what the typical number of story points are per story in the industry. So we have those measures. They're ranges, of course, they get you in the ballpark, but we can normalize the way you define the work and we can base it on industry data, and we can help you to normalize it within your own organization. That way different groups can talk to each other within your own company. But that's a popular question and something we deal with all the time. And the other thing about our tools is our support is included and the training is included. So if you work with us, we'll help you as part of the software package. We'll actually, if you needed help with an estimate, we would help you. If you need help sizing a system, we'll help you as part of the support.
Okay, so I think we're starting to get over our hour mark, but I think we could take one more question. And it is, would it be safe to say that simply getting an organization to capture the measures at completion that SLIM uses would improve their ability to estimate, monitor, and manage their projects going forward?
A definite yes. In fact, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you asked that, because a lot of people think before they talk to us that they need to have a ton of data, and you really don't. In fact, Larry Putnam, a senior who I mentioned earlier in the webinar, he wrote a book called 5 Core Metrics, right? He talks about streamlining the estimating process, honing in on key measures. And so, but yes, if you can gather a little bit of metrics, a little bit of historical data, it goes a very long way in helping with estimating, tracking your projects and those early decisions, and for proposals as well.
So I think that covers pretty much everything, but if there's any I missed, I'm going to send the transcript of the questions to Keith, so we will follow up if there's anybody that I missed. And please feel free to contact us using the information that Keith is sharing above. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Keith, thanks for a great presentation and Q&A. And please stay tuned for future webinars from QSM.
Great. Thanks, Elizabeth. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Really appreciate it.